I asked Mrs. Cohen to post it. If you can tell the girls in level 1 that I'm switching with Rabbi Duba.
Okay.
He's teaching 30, I'm teaching 11, 15. Okay. So to continue where we left off yesterday, where did we leave off yesterday? We brought all these questions about Torah and the angels. And we explained that the every line in Torah, every mitzvah in Torah, every story in Torah really has tremendous amount of depth behind it. But the Eibishter took his wisdom and he presented it in a simple way so we can be able to grasp it. But the wisdom that's in Torah is really much deeper than what we see. And that explains why the Torah is called Hashem's Mashal. Did I mention this yesterday? Yeah, one of the things on this page, number 9, is a pasuk, Hashem's Mashal. So, based on that, and to explain that a little bit further, I want to give you an example of something you can say is like a mashal. Is a halacha, do not put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. What does it mean? Anybody familiar with that mitzvah? It's an actual love. What does it mean?
Well, it's like you shouldn't mislead somebody that doesn't know.
Is it okay to put a stumbling block on the floor when a blind person is walking so he should trip?
No.
Okay, so if you read the pasuk, the literal meaning is don't put something in front of a blind person because he's going to trip and fall. The Gemara comes along and says, no, it's not only that, it also means something deeper. That if somebody is blind, not literally blind, blind in terms of advice, he doesn't know whether he should buy this house or not buy the house, sell this house or not sell this house, and you give him advice that'll make him fall. What does fall mean? Financially fall, not that he's going to fall on his nose, right? So that means that when it says in the Torah, don't put a stumbling block in front of a person to fall, that's the simple, that's like the mashal, even though it's not just a mashal, it's a halacha. And not to stumble by misleading him to make a mistake financially is like the deeper meaning behind it. But what about misleading someone and telling them the food is kosher and it's really not, and he eats it?
That's the same.
It's also part of this thing. Going a little bit a step deeper. And then you can go on and on and on, which means the principle is the same principle of logic, but understood on a much deeper level. So remember we learned that Shlomo Melech needed 3,000 Mishalim. So how many does Hashem need? If Shlomo Melech, a human being, needs 3,000 Mishalim, how much does Hashem need? We don't even know. But that means that the depth of wisdom that's in the Torah is infinitely greater and deeper than what's written, but it's connected to the Torah, what it says in Torah, which means the logic of what it says in Torah do not make a person stumble. Or it says in Torah, honor your father and your mother. Or it says in Torah, do not eat this kind of food. Don't eat milk and meat together. There's something deeper behind it, and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And that's Hashem's wisdom. Hashem's wisdom is infinitely greater and more than what we understand when we look in the Chumash or Gemara or Mefarshim. Is this understood? Okay, now that's step 1. I want to go to step 2. Math, science, medicine, all these fields are brilliant wisdom. Astronomy, astrology, there's tremendous wisdom there. And they're all different fields of wisdom. But are the laws of logic and the principles of logic and nature of logic, is it the same everywhere or is it different?
Probably the same.
Probably the same. If you know more than one subject. Again, let's use an example. Do you know what kal v'chomer is? How much more so? That if this halacha is so and so in this case, let's say something's midrabanan, and therefore you're not allowed to do A, B, C. So come along, if this is midrabanan and you can't do A, B, C, that's prohibited midraisa, so you surely can't do A, B, C. That kind of logic. Could that logic apply to psychology? Could it apply to medicine? Could it apply? So if this thing helps for a small thing, for a big thing, of course it's going to help for the smaller thing. And the logic is the same logic, but it's in different areas and different areas of wisdom, but the principles of logic are the same. Now try to imagine, in a way, what we're really saying is there's certain principles. By the way, the Rambam, by the way, talks about this, that there's certain principles of logic which are the basis of all logic. And in fact, these principles are almost like beyond logic. They're like axioms. Everything is based on them. For example, that a son can be older than his father. That makes sense? But it's not only a son. It'll also be, let's say, it means the concept is that a product can be older than whatever it is that's producing the product. And then older could mean older in age. Older could also mean stronger, more capable. If A comes from B, how could A be more capable than B? And so on. So it's a principle of logic that can express itself in a million, billion, trillion different ways, but it's a principle in logic. So think of Torah, this is Hashem's wisdom, which really means not just Hashem's wisdom. This is the source of all wisdom in the whole universe. This is all the logic in the world are based on the same principles, and all the principles of logic are based on whatever the basic principles are, and that is Hashem's wisdom, the beginning of all wisdom that we know. And that's really what Torah is all about. It's Hashem's wisdom, but on the highest, most abstract, deepest, purest, most truthful level. And from there on, it comes down and gets starting to get applied here, there, and different places. So when we ask the question, how could it be that the Torah existed before the world existed? So the answer is, because this is the wisdom with which Hashem created the world. It's like asking a question, what comes first? Let's say Hashem created a bird. The bird came first, or first came the wisdom or the science of how a bird exists and is created, and then came the actual creation. Which came first?
The wisdom.
Of course. There's a wisdom in a bee, there's a wisdom in a bird, there's a wisdom in the tree, there's wisdom in everything that's created in the world, in a cell. The wisdom comes first, and that wisdom is the source for the actual thing. So Hashem's wisdom is the source of the whole creation. The creation is a product of Hashem's wisdom. So of course Hashem's wisdom precedes creation. So that answers these questions. What does it mean that Torah is Hashem's tool with which he creates the world? Torah comes before the world, because the Torah is not just the story. How could the story of Abraham Avinu and Sarah come before the world was created? It's the wisdom that's in this story, the Chochmah of Hashem, and the Chochmah of Hashem that's in every line that's in Torah, and that is what came first. And then the Torah sort of brings down this wisdom through the story of Abraham and Noach and Moshe and Mitzrayim and Bidbar and everything that we're reading and all the halacha that we read and so on. Is this understood? Got it? Okay. Now I want to go back to the most difficult of all questions, I think, was what does it mean when he stood up and said the Torah is not in the heavens and we don't listen to heavenly voices? We're going to make a decision down here. How can that be? How can that make any sense? So again, it comes from having a better understanding of what Torah is all about, and Torah is much deeper than what appears on the surface, as I'll soon explain. But as an introduction, if someone would ask you a question, where is it better to live, in New York or California? What would be the answer? Where do you live?
It depends. Yeah.
What did you say?
It depends.
Thank you. That's why I'm saying it anymore. Someone told me that he had a friend in high school he hadn't seen for years. They both were not too firm when they were in high school. They were in this sort of yeshiva, but most of the kids weren't religious, and they both were not so religious. And 20 years later, they met somewhere. He had no idea this was his friend. He had a beard. He couldn't recognize him. And then this person oh, that's who you are. He still didn't know, is he just religious or is he also connected to Chabad? And then he says to him, where do you live? He said, I live in California. But Gashmias is so much greater than New York. But Baruchnias, you can't even compare New York to California. When he heard me say Gashmias and Ruchnias, okay, I know. He got it. They got him too. You know, he said, so Gashmias, California is definitely a much better weather. It's but in many other ways it is better. But Baruchnias, and even in Gashmias, you can say there's certain advantages here and certain, and both are true. So therefore, as we say, it's different strokes for different folks. For some people, they're going to want to be where it's a better weather, and some people want to be in a place where they have a different advantage, which New York has, and that doesn't have, and so on. Even Maruchi, if he asks a question, so what's greater, learning Torah or doing mitzvahs? In other words, some person who dedicates himself to Torah study, and there's another person who's not such a scholar, but is dedicated to Achnasas Kala and to Tzedakah and to mitzvahs and Miftzayim and things like that. Which is greater? Just say one word, it depends. Right? 2 words. It reminds me, somebody told me he was on the bus and I heard a mother screaming at a child. It says, just 2 words, relax. So just 2 words, it depends. So that means that you learn Maimorim that explain how mitzvahs are higher than Torah, and there's Maimorim that explain you how Torah is higher than mitzvahs. And even Tzaddik and Beinani, who's on a higher level? I'm sure you came across Maimorim. Everyone understands Tzaddik is higher than a Beinani. Then the Maimorim know that a Beinani has a certain advantage over a Tzaddik, which means that they're both true. Who's greater, humans or angels? Same thing. There's an advantage in angels over humans, which is obvious. But then there's an advantage of humans over angels, because otherwise Hashem wouldn't have created humans. The ultimate purpose is He wants humans to do Torah mitzvahs here in this physical world. So here's another example, which is going to be related to our main question. And this is something which you also had in Maimorim and you had it in Tanya. So which life is greater? There's one source that says, Yafesh Shachas, one moment of pleasure in this physical world, in the spiritual world, is greater than an entire lifetime of pleasure in this physical world. But there's another source that says one moment of Torah mitzvahs in this physical world is greater than an entire lifetime in the spiritual world. So which is true? It depends. And what does it depend on? In terms of spirituality, where's there more spirituality? No question. Up there, that's a world where there's no Yetzirah, there's no concealment, everything is revealed, God's presence is more revealed there. So in that sense, that world is greater. And the pleasure that the neshama will experience in that world from seeing and hearing and understanding godliness is infinitely more than anything it can experience here an entire lifetime, because everything is so much more revealed. So what's the advantage here over there? The advantage is that through here, it says in Tanya, we connect to the essence of Hashem, because this is Hashem's essence, what he wants in creation, and we embrace his essence when we do Torah mitzvahs in the physical world. So if a person does a simple act like eating a piece of matzah, you can't compare that to the pleasure that an neshama experiences up there. That's true. But the essence the neshama doesn't have up there. Remember the quote from the Baal Shem Tov. Baal Shem Tov said that Malach Mechol would be ready to give away everything spiritually that he achieved since the beginning of creation, which is quite a bit. We're talking about an angel and one of the greatest angels, and he's ready to give that away for a yid to exchange with him. Give me one string of your tzitzis. Why? Because this is the essence of Hashem, and they don't have that over there. Which answers another question. Good morning. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says a person is born against his will, and a person, unfortunately, leaves this world against his will. So which is it? The neshama wants to be here, wants to be there. So the simple pshat, like some people think is the pshat, is that the neshama wants to be up there, doesn't want to come down. Once it comes down and enjoys all the pleasures of this world, then it doesn't want to leave here and to go there. But the way it's explained in Tanya, Chassidus, is that no, both things are true. The neshama wants to be there and not here because this is a dark world. This is a world of darkness and concealment and distant from Hashem. And the neshama wants to be as close to Hashem as possible. So therefore, coming down here is sort of Mesiras Nefesh for the neshama. On the other hand, over here, the neshama is able to connect to the Hashem with his essence. And as a result of that, the neshama wants to be here, not there. Because one moment here is worth more than a whole lifetime there. And of course, the strongest evidence to that is that all the tzaddikim, all the yidden, but especially tzaddikim and neviim and the greatest giants of history that have passed away hundreds and thousands of years ago, and they're enjoying Gan Eden now over these hundreds and thousands of years, they're all waiting for Mashiach to come, that what should happen? That they come back down here. So clearly, being down here is infinitely more than all the pleasure up there. But on the other hand, you can't change the fact that up there, there's a certain pleasure that they'll never experience down here. So the way this, generally speaking, the way it's explained in Chassidus is that Hashem wants a world that's balanced. Balance means that it should be balanced from all angles. All the advantages should exist. And therefore, Hashem created different circumstances, different people. Like I asked a question before, so what's better, learning Torah or doing mitzvahs? Truth is, each one has an advantage. So what did Hashem do? He created people that their mission in life is Torah study. And that's what they do all day. They learn Torah, they teach Torah, and that's their occupation. There are other people Hashem created that circumstances led to it that they're not into Torah. They're into doing good deeds and helping other people and so on and so forth. And each one brings down different aspects of Hashem into the world by doing what they do. And the same applies to everything else. So, for example, if there is a question in halacha, is this food kosher or treif? On the surface, it's a technical question. This makes it kosher, this makes it treif, but beruchni is something much deeper going on here. There's a spark of godliness in this piece of meat. Kosher means that the Torah says you can elevate this piece of meat, make a bracha over it, eat it, and you can elevate it. Not kosher means Hashem is saying this cannot be elevated. This has to be rejected. There's a story with the Alter Rebbe. I assume it happened before the Alter Rebbe became Rebbe, that someone came to him with a shaila. It was a butcher. Something came up with the meat, which was a question whether it's kosher or not. So he brought it to the Alter Rebbe, the question. The Alter Rebbe said, it's really a difficult question. I have to look into it. If you want to wait, then I'll look into it and give you an answer. So Alter Rebbe started looking into it. He sat down in the waiting room waiting, but he was so exhausted from all the work all day that he fell asleep. Fell asleep for a long time. He wakes up, like, where am I? Oh, wait, he came to ask Alter Rebbe Shaila. He picks himself up, looks into the Alter Rebbe's room, and he sees piles of books here, piles of books there. And apparently the Alter Rebbe is doing the research on this, and he felt terrible. The Alter Rebbe is spending so much time researching it. So he said, Alter Rebbe, I'm really sorry I fell asleep. I didn't realize you're spending so much time. It's not a problem. I'll throw out the meat. It's not the end of the world. I'm so sorry. The Alter Rebbe said to him, if you would see, this is Alter Rebbe's words, that's what I heard. If you would see the cow was standing here and begging me to make it kosher, you wouldn't talk like that. I know the Alter Rebbe meant there was actually a cow saying, moo, 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 make me kosher. The cow was slaughtered already. It meant there's a godly spark in this meat, and that godly spark wants to be elevated, and depending on what the Torah will rule, which means what the Alter Rebbe will rule, that's what's going to determine whether they'll have an elevation or not. So whenever the Torah rules that something cannot be elevated, it's not kosher, or somebody's guilty and they're not innocent, all these things mean that this I'm giving an example. This is a manifestation of Hashem's attribute of Gevura. And whenever the Torah rules in a situation that this is permissible, we can be lenient, this person's found not guilty, that means we've just manifested Hashem's attribute of Chesed. And in fact, this is the main difference between Shammai and Hillel, these two great sages. Even though they were both great tzaddikim, and they were the leaders of the generation, and they're the ones who established the oral Torah, nevertheless, they had different approaches, and we find that in most cases, except for a few exceptions, Hillel was always more lenient, and Shammai was more strict. And some people, when they learn the Gemara, they think, oh, Shammai was like a mean person or an angry person, chas v'shalom. Shammai, when he gave a halacha, through his paskening, that this is not kosher, or this is not, this person's found guilty, or whatever what it was along those lines, he revealed in the world Hashem's attribute of Gevurah. And the reason was because that was their shlichus. Being that Hashem wants a balanced world, he created tzaddikim that they're more connected to chesed, and therefore they're going to see the advantage in the chesed part, and they're going to come out with a ruling that will reveal Hashem's attribute of chesed in the world. And there are other tzaddikim that their shlichus in this world is to reveal Hashem's attribute of Gevurah, and therefore they were created in such a way, and they see things, they notice, and they pick up, and they perceive the aspect which would be the Gevurah aspect of it. And that's where all the differences come in. So getting back to our story, here there's a question of halacha. Is this oven kosher or impure, or could it be pure? Right? That was the question. That we said the rabbis were having this big debate. So Rabbi Lezer said that it's kosher, it's tahor, it's pure. And the sages were saying, no, it's not pure. Now, based on what I just told you, now both could be true. If this is a place and a situation where Hashem's attribute of chesed is revealed, then it will be pure Gevurah, and that's what Rabbi Lezer saw it. And the sages saw that it's tamei, it's impure, has to be rejected. So they saw it from a different aspect. What happened was that in heaven they ruled that it's supposed to be the way Rabbi Lezer said. And Rabbi Shua stood up and said, Torah is not in the heaven. What does it mean? It means like this. Just like in general, I want to give a little introduction, be ready before I explain this, so it'll be better understood. We're approaching Shavuos, which is the Baal Shem Tov's day of passing, a yahrzeit. So there's a story of the Baal Shem Tov. The story is very famous, but only one part of the story. The other part of the story is not so famous. The story that's very famous is that Baal Shem Tov went to the chamber of Mashiach, and he asked him, "When are you coming?" And Mashiach said, "When your wellspring will spread to the world." I heard it like everyone else, hundreds of thousands of times. And one time I decided to look it up inside. I looked it up inside. There's a fascinating story behind it. Where is it? There's a paper called Keser Shem Tov, where the Friedrich Rebbe said every chassid should have this in his house. And this Keser Shem Tov is sayings of the Baal Shem Tov, and this is on the first page. It's a letter the Baal Shem Tov wrote to his brother-in-law. And in the letter he describes how on Rosh Hashanah night, it was the year Tov Zayin, I guess, Tov Kuv Zayin, which is 1747. Yeah. Then that year, that Rosh Hashanah, he went up, his neshama went up to the highest spiritual plane. And he said he saw such simcha there that he couldn't imagine. Wow, what's going on? Couldn't figure it out. He saw such joy. Obviously, he must have visited that place more often, but he never saw such simcha. And then there were he said he saw people, he writes his brother-in-law, that these were such wicked people in past history, you wouldn't believe that they were forgiven and that they're all pure and cleared out. And then he saw other neshamas that said to him, "Come, let's go to a higher place." And he said, "I was afraid to go there. I said, I'll only go there if my Rebbe will come with me." Who is his Rebbe? Achia Shilenu. So we went together. When we came to the chamber of Mashiach. The simcha there knew no bounds. Never ever saw anything like this in my life. And then comes the punchline. And he said he thought the reason why they were so happy was that because he passed away, and I guess he's joining them now. So I'm thinking to myself, what? The greatest simcha ever is because they thought the Baal Shem Tov passed away? How does that make sense? Yeah.
You know, I was gonna say maybe because when he passed away and then he accomplished his mission. And it was such an important mission.
It's probably part of it. But based on what I said before, remember we said there's an advantage up there. So the neshamas that are up there, are they miserable every day because they're not down here? No. How can it be? The answer is what they feel and what they enjoy and what they recognize is the advantage that's up there over down here. They see that more, they feel that more, because that's where they are now. We down here are meant to feel and recognize the advantage of being here over the other, and that's why we have to daven for health and long life, and things should be good begashmias and so on and so forth. In other words, Hashem created them and us. They're there to sort of experience and enhance that kind of life, and we're here to experience and enhance this kind of life, a physical life. So we have to do mitzvahs begashmias. I'll get to in a second. And the angels, they're there to do spiritual things, and the neshamas are there to do spiritual things. Both things are true. So the neshamas up there, they see the advantage of being up there, and therefore that's why they were excited for the Baal Shem Tov, that now he has that tremendous advantage of him being in a place which is unlimited pleasure compared to what it was down here. Now, what do you want to say?
So I understand from what we're taught, I hear the advantage of being down here and I hear the pleasure out there. But the question just came to me. So what is the purpose of the neshama in Garden of Eden? What's happening?
That's another discussion. But basically they're the ones, because there should be a balance, that's part of the balance. That there's a place where spirituality is sort of dominating, and there's this place where physicality is dominating. And that creates the balance in the whole universe, the whole creation. We need both. Yeah.
What was the point of the part about all the evil people that were exonerated somehow.
Because of the simcha. That was the point of the simcha. And when a king is the simcha, he pardons prisoners. So apparently all these people were pardoned because of the great simcha that was on that day.
Because they thought that Baal Shem Tov had died.
No.
Oh,
He said he thought that's why they were besimcha, but that wasn't the reason. They informed him, no, you're still alive.
so what was it?
Doesn't say.
Oh.
If he didn't know, how would I know that? Anyway, I can't reveal that. As usual, yeah.
So how does this connect back?
I'm getting there. I'm on the way. I'm trying to walk. It's a tightrope to get there. So when there was a heavenly voice, so in other words, even down here, there are certain things that in terms of bringing out more spirituality in the world, it's better to do things one way. But in terms of, let's say, something like fasting and not eating, that brings out more spirituality in the world because I'm moving away from the physical. But in terms of fulfilling Hashem's purpose of bringing godliness into the physical, I'm going the wrong direction. So there were times in history where that was a good thing to do, and that was a time where it's not a good thing to do. Basically, this question in halacha, this is without going into the details because we don't know, but the question in halacha had both answers. In heaven, they said it's one way, and down here, Rabbi Lezer ruled it's another way. Means like this: that the way it seemed from the heavenly perspective, from the spiritual perspective, that things are mainly spiritual. From that perspective, this thing should be impure. This thing should be pure. From the perspective of all the rabbis down here, which means they're taking into consideration the human perspective, saying this should be impure. And when he said the Torah is not in the heaven anymore, means what Hashem gave us the Torah was that human beings with human brains should make a decision whenever they decide. That's the halacha, because it came out it was produced by the logic and the thoughts of human beings. The fact that it comes from Shemayim, it's true that from Shemayim perspective, this is better. But from the earthly perspective, where our goal is to do things in a way that's more connected to the Gashmizik world, that, based on that, it's the wrong thing to do. That's basically what it means. So it could be true 100%. It's emes, like we said before, that Ruchnish is greater. And it could be true 100% that Gashmis is greater. And that was, and based on those two principles came the differences of opinion. That looking from that perspective, if you would know the details of what was going on, you come to the conclusion that in this case, this kind of oven should be pure. But looking at it from this perspective, with these principles, with knowing that Gashmis is more important than Ruchnis, then you would understand why this oven should really be pure, not impure. It should be impure. How do we know what it is? Whatever they rule. There's one question that people always ask this: if both are emes, then why is the halacha one way, not the other? It could be this, it could be that. And the answer is the only reason why the halacha is one way, not the other, is because Hashem desired so. That's all. But in essence, that could have been the halacha, and this could have been the halacha. But Hashem wants it to be this one way. So basically, what you understand from all this is that, we look at the Torah and we see everything that's going on, but we see it from a very external. There's so much depth within the Torah, and based on that depth, we can understand how both perspectives could be true, and yet the halacha could be one way, not the other way, because that's what Hashem said. But both are true, and both are part of Torah. Because I actually remember hearing with somebody saying that no, if it is an opinion that's not according to halacha, it means it's not true. So I said to him, that means there's pages and pages in Gemara which are not true. So he looked at me and said, yeah, I guess. But you make a bracha and you say, I thank you Hashem for giving us the Torah, which is true. So he said, well, which is there such an opinion? Being that it leads us to know the truth, so it's all part of truth. But that means, when you start learning Chassidus and Kabbalah, there's not a word, there's not a line, there's not a letter in Torah that's not emes. Everything is emes. But how could it be emes if there's two opinions? The answer is because they're both emes from different perspectives.
That means two exact opposite things could be true.
And they both could be true.
Something can be treif and kosher at the same time. There's no absolute principles.
There are absolute, it's based on absolute principles. I mean, is much more to what I'm saying. We can do everything now, but that's the general idea. I don't know if I confused you more or made it more clear.
Majeski, one more question, I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Okay, about a logic, you said before, but their logic also is a creation, so it's not really absolute either. I think Hashem could make logic.
sure.
Right, so
Yeah.
how is that an explanation of everything logic? It's okay, so it's logic, but it's not logic. I mean, it is logic until Hashem makes it not logic.
No, the Torah is Hashem's logic is not, his essence is infinite, which is beyond logic. But he created logic, and that logic is the source of all logic in the whole world, and that's the logic which is the source of Torah. Yeah.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
using logic, and that's the logic of the source of Torah. But Torah is beyond logic.
It means that in the logic of Torah, there's something deeper, which is Ein Sof, which is Hashem's infinite light. But it doesn't mean the logic is not logic. The logic is logic. But the logic, how deep it is and how great it is and how amazing it is only a capsule to something even deeper than logic, which is Ein Sof. So I think these are the two hardest things in this list, number 1 and number 11. And one is the Torah is not in the heaven, and the other one is that both opinions in Torah could both be true. Because in one case Hashem says, I want my attribute of chesed to be revealed here. So the halacha is this, in this case, this meat is going to be kosher. And in another case, Hashem wants, in this situation, I want my attribute of gvura to be revealed there. And therefore, the halacha will be, this person is found guilty, and so on. So all in all, it should give us a totally different understanding of Torah, to understand that there's the real true depth that there is in Torah, and that everything has, even on a level of logic, infinite meaning and understanding, and that's why there was even a possibility that the angels would say, "Give us the Torah." It meant to say, "Give us the Torah on that deeper level of understanding that we would really get it. You don't have to bring it down so low like you bring it down for humans." And Hashem said, "No, that's my ultimate purpose. There's a whole purpose of creation is dafka, to bring it down to the physical world. That it should be there for human beings to learn, to daven, to do mitzvahs, and so on and so forth." Okay. Yeah.
I make just a point that I realized that, like, in help with compassion, I don't know, for me, maybe other people, the principle of moral relativity, I find really abhorrent, like, well, their morals are that it's okay to blah, 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 and they're not wrong. That, that principle of moral relativity that people talk about here. Oh, okay, so it's a thing.
First time I hear it, yeah.
Yeah, no, like people, it's a big ideology.
I mean that to be moral or not moral is also relative. You can choose.
Morality is relative, and you can't judge somebody that it's an ideology in
Sure.
the world.
Until you beat them up.
You can't judge somebody who basically breaks basic principles of morality, like, because you don't know. Not you can't judge them because you don't know, but you can't judge them because you can't judge their morals, is the idea.
Because there are no morals.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. But even, and then I meet a Jewish person that's like that, and like, it's really like, and I'm supposed to love their soul, and it's hard, It is, and unity, it's hard when confronted with these kind of ideas, but when you say this, even that, it's completely used for the bad, it's completely turned upside down, and it's evil. the same time, it even has a piece of truth from this principle that the story you just told about the perspective of heaven versus earth. It doesn't make that right. It's upside down. It's
Right.
wrong. But it just can give me an opening to have compassion, but even they're attached to some truth. It just used it for that.
I don't see the connection.
The connection being, in this case, from the perspective of heaven, this is pure. From the perspective of earth, it's impure. So they're saying the same thing. They're saying from the perspective of the person that grew up in this society, this is moral. From the perspective of people that they're wrong, it's 100% wrong. There's emis, and they are against basic morality. But the idea of looking from different perspectives has, that's
Right, we always do that there are different perspectives, and therefore we can accept each other's opinions, but it still has to be a perspective that has truth to it, not a perspective which is
100%.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
okay. So good Shabbos, everybody. This is Shabbos. Told you the special day that it's Erev Rosh Chodesh Sivan, and this is when it all began regarding Mashiach. I think I told you that part. The Friedrich Rebbe came out with his announcement, 1941. So this could be around perfect circle. It should end on this day.
Which announcement was it?
La'alta l'tshuva, la'alta l'gula. But it wasn't just an announcement, it was a whole declaration in the newspaper that everybody should get ready for Mashiach, and now is the time. It was during the war. Now we have to do tshuva, and that'll bring Mashiach immediately.
Now Trump announced it.
What?
Now Trump announced it.
Right. Well, that's the Rebbe said 40 years ago that this Shabbos, everyone should unite on Shabbos, Shabbos Avdus. And that's the Shabbos that he came out and he said,
Next 15. This is the next.
no, this
No,
Shabbos.
this Shabbos. Yeah, I'm sure.
What did the Rebbe
Lucky you
say?
saw it. What?
Did the Rebbe say?
Interesting how it's.
And then
Yeah, it's too much.
Yeah,
Number gematria.
that's the gematria.
Oh, there's
Of this Shabbat is 250. And it's the 250th anniversary of the United States, which is what prompted Trump.
Uh-huh. Okay, that's a new one. But what the Rebbe said was, it was that year, again, 40 years ago, it was the same arrangement. Shabbos was Erev Rosh Chodesh was on Sunday, Shabbos was Bamidbar, but there was something going on which we don't understand, and the Rebbe requested that this Shabbos, Yidden from all over should get together. Why am I saying something was going on? In general, when the Rebbe comes out with something unprecedented, something new, it means something's going on. But in this case, the Rebbe used the term, it's a bakosha nafshis, which means use it maybe a few times. You can count on your fingers all the years of his leadership to say, I'm saying this and I'm asking this from the depth of my soul.
Wow.
That's very unusual.
The 40 years.
Yeah, but that was that year. Of course, didn't mean that we had to do it every single year. But nevertheless, it's this Shabbos and the same arrangement. So getting together and uniting is always a good thing. But the most in a lot of communities, especially the Bachrim, the yeshivas, this Shabbos was always a big Shabbos, where different yeshivas from different parts would get together in one single place, so they'd be more united. In Europe, in America, and other countries, Israel. Okay, a good Shabbos, everybody.
Shabbos.
Yeah. But whatever, it's still going there, it's still out there, but it's still out there.
100%. And there are going to be people that do that.
Yeah, what, keep you on to that?
No, to do it.
No, it's saying like
One more extra
thing.
that's about Tucker.
Yeah.
So that's, I was wondering if it was the same, it goes the same.
Right,
way.
unfortunately.
It doesn't say,
Oh,
yeah.
It's not.
It's really,
But it's okay, it's, yeah, I hope that you're looking at that aside, and remember that you're Jewish first. I know, you know. But.
Yeah.
It's really.
But did you?
You're right, just this.
Not say not those three. Right.
No, I'm just so tired. But I'm okay. Yeah. Oh my god, what am I right class? This is not the right class. Why don't? Because I didn't really feel like that. And then.
It makes, yeah. It's hard, you need to.
What should I make? Do you know buy wine first?
In.
Wine, meat. And article.
As long as you have some passion.
I didn't like, look, it's a unity.
Oh,
What time is it?
They say every single person.
I'll go find one.
So we learned
I'll go get one.
that just like the Torah allowed us to do malacha for the purposes of eating, it's also not even for the purpose of eating. It doesn't apply to all the malachas, but it does apply to cooking. So being allowed to cook water to drink